Kiss.
Yeah, it's your boy Marquez Smith, also known as Akins, also known as Coolest Guy in Sports. Back with another overrated or underrated. This time I have Chris Paul on the menu. Is Chris Paul overrated or underrated? In 46 games this year, 32.5 minutes per game, 15.7 points per game, shooting 42% from the field, 36 from the three-point line, 4.6 rebounds, 8.2 assists, 0.3 blocks, 1.9 steals per game, 85.8 from the free throw line. Is Chris Paul overrated or underrated? Now, Chris Paul is having a down year. We know that all his stats are down from a year ago, but we also know that he's been hurt similar to a year ago as well. And it's always hard when you're talking about a point guard, a guy that has done so much to the game of basketball and one of the best true pure basketball players in the history of the NBA. But we got to break this down. Is Chris Paul overrated or underrated? Now, that 4-year extension of $160 million Chris Paul earned, that contract is definitely overrated. Now, Chris Paul is going to be making over $40 million in a later part of his contract. And everybody was hoping that, well, he wasn't going to start to decline in year 3 or 4, but we're seeing him decline in year 2. But the reason why we're seeing him decline is because he's been hurt and he's been injured for most of the entire season. And also, we got to understand that we don't need to see the same Chris Paul from last year. We just need Chris Paul to be healthy at the right moments. Everybody gets caught up on the regular season so much, and even though his numbers are down and his production hasn't been worthy of that maximum contract that he received, but come playoff time, that's when we get to see the real Chris Paul. Just like in playoff time, that's when we get to see the real LeBron James elevate their games where we know it's going to matter the most having them on the court. So, is he overrated or underrated? He's probably the most overrated player on the Rockets today, considering the fact of, he's going to miss a lot of games. His numbers are down. But him being overrated on the Rockets does not mean he's overrated overall. Yes, he's overpaid, but did he deserve that contract? If the Rockets offered him that contract again, would he turn it down? No, of course not. Get your money, get paid. But in the entire league standards, is he overrated? Of course not. When he is healthy, when Chris Paul is healthy, he's a top 2 point guard in the league. Other than Stephen Curry, I wouldn't take anybody over Chris Paul. The reason why I wouldn't take anybody over Chris Paul, because Chris Paul does everything well on the basketball court. He's the most complete point guard in the NBA when he is healthy. The problem is he's hardly ever healthy. So that's why you have people thinking he's overrated, but he's not overrated. He's just injury prone. But when he's healthy and when he's on his game, and like we've seen in the playoffs, handles, check. Defending, check. Mid-range, check. Passing, check. Three-point shooting, check. He's the most complete he's the most complete point guard in the NBA when he is healthy. And that's no knock against anybody else, but that's just how great of a point guard Chris Paul is. And so many times we've seen him get close to these big moments, like when the Clippers were beating the Spurs, and then he had his hamstring injury, but he made the game winning shot to get him out of that round to beat the San Antonio Spurs. And we saw how last year they were on the cusp to beating the Golden State Warriors, and he got hurt. So I'm hoping and praying that Chris Paul this upcoming postseason can be healthy so we can see him do the damage that he normally does. But I don't think he's overrated. I just think he's very overpaid. Some people say, how can you be overpaid and not overrated? Simply because even though he may be the most overpaid player and overrated player on the Rockets, and when I say overrated player on the Rockets, I'm really talking about James Harden's ability to not really need Chris Paul really until the playoffs. It's more important pieces on that team that they need before the playoffs during the regular season than Chris Paul. That's why I'm saying he's the most overrated Rocket, but he's not overrated when it matters the most, and that's when it's crunch time. That's when it's playoffs. That's when we need somebody to get you a bucket or a basket, and he goes for the most overrated member on the Houston Rockets to the most important member on the Houston Rockets in the playoffs. That shows you his impact. So, of course, I don't think Chris Paul is overrated. I actually think he's a little bit underrated because everybody's sleeping on him and saying that he's getting old, he's declining so much. I really just think he's pacing himself like LeBron James do. Even though LeBron James wasn't able to do that this year, he's pacing himself because he doesn't want to get hurt again in a meaningless regular season when they know that the playoffs is where it matters the most. So no, do not think Chris Paul is overrated. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Is CP3 overrated or underrated? It's your boy Ma K Smith, also known as AKs, also known as the coolest guy in sports. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on these videos. Basketball fans only. Bifo movement. Let's get me to 1,000 subs. Please share with your friends, your family. I need all the support. I'm at 128 subs right now. Thank you guys for all you've done. This is your boy, Ma K Smith, also known as AKIS. I'm gone, man. Peace.